So moving on to our next piece of architecture, we're going to talk about Gothic architecture. And a great example of Gothic architecture is the Cathedral of Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, however you like to say it. This was built in 1163 and took over 100 years to finish the construction. If you think about it, back then they didn't have power tools or cranes or anything like that. So construction took a really long time. Because it's been around for so long, it's been reconstructed through the many wars and decay has gone through. The Cathedral of Notre Dame translates in French to Our Lady of Peace. It is located in Paris, France, and we're going to look at 5 different architectural elements that make this Gothic architecture. So before I get talking to the pieces of Gothic architecture that is located on the museum, I want to talk about why the cathedral is so important, like what is inside of it. One thing is it has a great organ. So yes, we have one organ in our church, but this organ is humongous. It has over 8,000 pipes. It also has 10 bells, the heaviest weighing up to 10 tons. It has the crown of thorns, which is believed to be placed on the head of Christ. And the cathedral calls it one of its most precious relics. You can see a picture of that up here in the top right corner. It also has a nail, which some believe was used to crucify Christ, which is right here. It's really little, it's hard to see. It's in a little case here. And it also has many sculptures and statues and paintings inside that depict Bible scenes and saints as well. So moving on to the different pieces of architecture we're going to talk about today. These are architectural elements that are known as Gothic architecture. So I'm going to link this PowerPoint onto our Google Classroom, but when you touch each one of these red dots, it will take you to the piece of architecture and kind of tell you more about it. So let's start from left to right, and I'm going to go to this first dot here. So we are going to talk about gargoyles, these funny looking creatures. Gargoyles are basically these stone statues that are on the end caps of the structure, and they serve as water spouts or drain the water away from the building. So it's kind of like your eaves trough on your house. Sometimes the water will actually be coming out of their mouths. Although a lot of people think they look frightening and gruesome, they're actually supposed to be pretty comical. As you can tell, like this one has its tongue sticking out here. The next thing we're going to talk about are the towers. So the towers are these 2 really tall structures up here. This is where the bells are hung in the church here. And they are the tallest part of the church and usually the last element that was added to the construction of the church. And this is the front of Notre Dame right here. So we did the gargoyles, we did the towers, and now we're going to move on to this, which is the rose window. If you're in 8th grade, we've talked about the rose window before. So what's really unique about the Notre Dame Cathedral is that because of the changing of architecture, the walls were a lot thinner than what they used to be. So back in the day, they used to be these giant boulders, and so they had a really hard time putting panes of glass into the windows. So Notre Dame actually has 3 giant rose windows. Each of the panes depict different Bible scenes. It's hard to see here, and they're all hand painted. There is other different types of stained glass windows throughout the cathedral as well, but it's hard to tell in this just small picture, but these rose windows are humongous. So this is a large circle consisting of 84 different panes, and in each one of these different panes, these like little circles here, are figures from the Bible. So moving on, we are going to go up here and we're going to talk about the spire. So this is that tall structure right here. So back in the day, they thought that bigger the cathedral, the taller the spire, the closer you are to the heavens. So when the cathedral was first built, it actually had 2 spires. One spire was actually removed because it was so damaged. So in the most recent state of the cathedral, it has one of these spires. Of course, we got the cross at the top and being the tallest point of the building. And also you can see how elaborately, it's hard to see from this far away view, but how elaborately it is decorated. Next, we're going to go over here to the roof structure. So we're going to talk about how tall this cathedral is, and how they got that high is because they had these rib vaulted ceilings. So you can see the ribs are this structure here, these lines that are going up to the top. So it's kind of like if you think about your rib cage, it helps support the ceiling. So these are your like rib vaults here. And it's like the skeletal structure of the roof that helps with these arches that it creates, and it helps bear the weight of the stone. This allowed the builders to kind of make this dome shape here. And then last, we're going to go over here. If you're looking at this outside view here, we are talking about this structure that kind of makes this weird L shape from the outside of the building. These are called flying buttresses. So it's these things right here. They are built to help support these heavy walls. So because they were making these really tall cathedral structures, they needed some kind of outside support to help support these giant stone walls. So these are outside structures of the cathedral that are made to help bear the weight of the cathedral walls, and that way they can make these thinner walls. So these actually surround the entire cathedral, and they did add some decoration and some elaborate like little spire elements here to kind of make them blend in with the rest of the building and not just look like they're holding up the building. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Notre Dame Cathedral has been in the news in the recent year or so. If you've seen it in 2019 on the news, it's because there was a very large fire that actually engulfed most of the entire building. So I just want you to watch this short little video on it.
Welcome to CBS This Morning. We're talking about one of the great symbols of Paris and all of Western civilization. It is still standing this morning after a fire that nearly destroyed it. Flames brought down the spire and much of the roof at Notre Dame Cathedral yesterday. And think about this, it's the start of Holy Week. This morning the fire is out, and prayers and offers of help are coming in from all around the world.
The cathedral's main altar is covered in debris right now, but much of the historic interior appears to be okay, and that's great news. The fire started during a major renovation project. Seth Doan is outside Notre Dame right now in the heart of Paris, a familiar sight to millions of Americans. Seth, this is tough. Good morning.
Good morning. The Paris prosecutor is saying that they are working under the belief that this fire was started by an accident, and there are around 50 people working on the investigation. Paris today is stunned, is heartbroken, and newspaper writers have been trying to put those emotions into words. This headline reads, "Tears." This one reads, "Disaster." As vicious flames engulfed the 850-year-old masterpiece of Gothic architecture, France's president said a part of us is burning.
Like, I saw a lot of people crying on the streets, and it's all because it's the symbol of France, it's the symbol of generations.
The fire broke out in the attic around 6:50 local time, about 5 minutes after Notre Dame closed for the day. It spread to the roof at the rear of the cathedral. In less than an hour, flames spread to its giant spire, which just 13 minutes later collapsed. 400 firefighters battled, but at times appeared dwarfed by the fire, which tore through the soaring structure, fueled by the wood of 1,300 oak trees that made up part of an interior network of wooden beams. Dropping heavy water from the air was not an option, for fear it had caused the entire structure to collapse. 2/3 of the roof was ravaged. But medieval stonemasons may have saved Notre Dame by doing such a good job on the buttresses that survived the fire. There was a rush to save artwork and artifacts. Paris's mayor said the Holy Crown of Thorns and other precious pieces had been successfully recovered. Today we're getting our first look inside, where the cross on the altar appears to shine amid the devastation. Stone saints look toward firefighters, and some pews survived. Attention is now turned to the stained glass windows and the organ, one of the oldest in the world. Notre Dame had become one of the most popular sites in Paris, attracting about 30,000 visitors a day, around 13 million a year. During the fire, onlookers crowded onto bridges and streets, watching in horror. Powerless, some prayed or broke into song. The French president was defiant. The worst has been avoided, he said, adding, "We will rebuild."
Other presidents, a pope, and people around the world have been paying tribute and also making pledges to help rebuild Notre Dame, already in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Gail?
Seth Doan outside Notre Dame.
So that happened almost a year ago from today. So they have just actually started the process of rebuilding Notre Dame. What really saved the building is they talked about the flying buttresses, these structures that are coming off the side of the building. But this entire building, for the most part, is made out of stone. Stone doesn't really catch on fire, but what did catch on fire is the roof, which is made of wood beams. So all along here is what caught on fire. And obviously you saw this devastating news that the spire actually did fall off and was taken apart from the structure. So just to recap, we talked about the gargoyles that are on the ends caps of the building here that helped get water away from the building. We talked about the two towers. These actually hold the bells of the cathedral. We talked about the rose windows. There are 3 different rose windows in Notre Dame. We talked about the tall spire, which you can kind of see here how elaborately it is decorated. We talked about the rib vault ceiling, which allowed architects at that time to get really tall buildings. And then we talked about the flying buttresses, which help support these really tall buildings and their heavy stone walls. Like I said, I'll post this PowerPoint on Google Classroom, so if you need to go back and look at it, you can do so.